Section 4: School to Prison Pipeline. The vicious cycle of criminalization of poverty often starts very early in poor people's lives. Poor Black and Latino school children are much more likely to face harsh disciplinary measures that can place them on a track into the criminal justice system. Across the country, there is a growing epidemic of armed police officers arresting juveniles at schools for minor infractions and misbehavior. According to one complaint, lodged by a resident from Louisiana with the U.S. Department of Justice, police have unlimited authority to detain, frisk, and arrest school children. A parent sends their child to school to learn. A parent does not send their child to school with the expectation of the child being arrested on or off school grounds for minor misbehavior infractions. A school is supposed to be a safety net to aid in the improvement of lives of children, not to support the violation of this safety net. In some states, police officers are permanent fixtures on school grounds. Okay, I'm going to read this aside right here. One of the first things I saw was a huge differential in minority students, Black male students in particular, in terms of suspensions and arrest, says Robert Runice, the superintendent of Florida's Broward County Public Schools. Black students made up 2/3 of all suspensions during the 2011 and 2012 school year, despite comprising only 40% of the student body. And while there were 15,000 serious incidents like assaults and drug possession reported that year, 85% of all the 82,000 suspensions were for minor incidents, like the use of profanity or disruption of class. And 71% of all the 1,000 plus arrests were for misdemeanors. The last statistic, says Renice, was a huge red flag. School to prison pipeline effect. The ACLU defines the school to prison pipeline as the policies and practice that push our nation's school children, especially our most at-risk children, out of the classrooms and into the juvenile and criminal justice system. This pipeline reflects the prioritization of incarceration over education. This policy continues to place priority on the excessive penalization of student behavior or education, especially for certain sectors of society. The ACLU identified 5 factors that influence whether a student has a greater chance of being incarcerated: failing public schools, zero tolerance and these other school discipline concerns, policing school hallways, court involvement in juvenile detention, and disciplinary alternative schools. This approach to education produces adverse effects on students that will last a lifetime. Although students and teachers are affected in unsafe schools, actions like expulsion and arrest do not make schools any safer. According to the American Psychological Association, the APA, the above practices do more harm to academic achievement for all students. In addition, the APA stressed that those excluded will be held back, drop out, and become involved with the juvenile and criminal justice systems. The APA noted that the school discipline rate has doubled since the 1970s. This affects me personally because a lot of you have been the victim of this. The Annie E. Casey Foundation's 2014 Kids Count Data Book reports that not only was there an uptick in child poverty since the recession, but also the evidence suggests school districts and individual schools are becoming increasingly segregated as poverty and wealth become more residentially concentrated. This reality may decrease the likelihood that low-income and poor children will encounter educational opportunities in schools where the pipeline is absent. A nationwide study by the U.S. Department of Education, Office for Civil Rights, found that students form 2 groups are disproportionately represented in the pipeline: racial minorities and children with disabilities. According to the report, Black students are 3.5 times more likely to be suspended or expelled over their white peers. Once again, 3.5 times more likely to be suspended. Whereas Black students represent only 16% of the student population nationwide, they make up approximately 32 to 42% of students who are suspended or expelled. This infographic below, reprinted from the Advancement Project, tells the story of many of the ways the school-to-prison pipeline acts to criminalize poor youth and youth of color. So today's students experience prison-like environments. We have surveillance cameras. We have police dogs in school. How ridiculous. Armed guards. Security you have to go through. Have you ever been into school where you had to take off your shoes in order to get into school? School and local police on campus. Metal detectors. Strip searches. If my child ever got strip searched, I would be suing in 2 seconds. Physically uninviting buildings, for instance, having your school in like a factory. Underinvested schools. There's cutbacks on counselors, social workers, and mental health resources. Underfunded and under-resourced schools. Pressures and uncertainty. School closures, privatization. High stakes testing pressure on students, teachers, and administrators. Implicit and explicit bias, meaning the staff is biased against different types of students. Harsh school disciplines, out-of-school suspensions, what are some of the worst things you can do to a kid. Expulsions, transfers to alternative schools. There are alternative schools that are meant to rehabilitate students, like they're focused on reform in terms of reforming behavior. Zero tolerance policies. Out-of-school suspensions. Over 3 million students receive out-of-school suspensions annually. School arrest. 70% of students involved in school-related arrest or referred to law enforcement are Hispanic or African American. 70%. I can't imagine what a mother would do, a rich white mother, if her kid was going to get arrested in school. She would sue the heck out of that school. Suspension, race, and disability. 67% of school arrests in Florida are for misdemeanor charges, minor misdemeanor charges, like using profanity, cussing out somebody. Students have actually been arrested for a kindergartner was arrested for throwing a temper tantrum. Somebody was arrested for scribbling on a desk. Somebody was arrested for sneaking into school for a senior prank. Somebody was arrested for playing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song on a cell phone. Somebody was arrested for a science experiment gone wrong. Students have actually been suspended for talking about a Hello Kitty bubblegum, hugging a friend, chewing a Pop-Tart in the shape of a gun. Harsh discipline policies. It equals no trust in adults, no college or career, and does not make schools safer. Here's our policy recommendations. Various governmental agencies and non-governmental organizations are working to reform K-12 education and reverse the effects of the school-to-prison pipeline. The U.S. Department of Justice Education Supportive School Discipline Initiative targets the detrimental disciplinary policies that drive at-risk youth toward the criminal justice system. The initiative consists of 4 components. 1. Building consensus for action among federal, state, and local education and justice stakeholders. 2. Collaborating on research and data collection needed to shape policy, such as the evaluation of alternative disciplinary policies and interventions. 3. Developing guidance to ensure school discipline policies and practices are in line with the federal civil rights laws. 4. Promoting awareness and knowledge about evidence-based and promising policies and practices.